self-defense weapon.
Oh, yeah.
It's not as concealable or carryable or convenient, but if you need to carry a gun on your hip to defend yourself, like a black powder revolver will fulfill the basic function.
I think blunderbusses are pretty practical. I mean, you don't have to buy ammo. You just put some nails in there, some dirt.
He never liked going shooting with me until now shotgun. I can't get away. Let's go shooting. Let's go shooting. Well, I hit everything with the shotgun. I was like, yeah, when you're standing that close, and you better.
So one of the things that I always love to do, I don't know if we have too many people and not enough time right now. Oh yeah, we should be getting started in a few minutes. But I like to ask everybody, how did you wake up? And I don't mean like with the gun under your pillow or anything like that.
I married him. That's how I was. I married him.
I was raised by him.
Good answers.
It was gradual for me. You know, I got out of the Marine Corps and just, you know, thought the whole thing was shit, and, you know, kind of was a liberal at the time a little bit. Wanted to end the war and just fell down the rabbit hole. Nothing really absurd.
Well, what was the rabbit hole for you?
You know, I started out as like, you know, your moderate, center-line, slightly liberal, and then found libertarianism when I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff the liberals were doing, like just mainstream capital L libertarian, and then, you know, started reading Rothbard and some of the more, you know,
Which Rothbard?
Indian State, and I've read several of his works. I forget everything that I've read of his. The Lew Rockwell, what was the new one he wrote about 5 years ago?
I know he had one that came out 3 years ago.
Yeah, that might have been it. That
It was an Anarcho-Capitalist Manifesto. Was
Yeah,
the subtitle, right? It was Against the State.
I was pretty much I was pretty much an ANCAP at that point. That was a really good one that kind of lays out a little bit more detail in how things would end up working, which is kind of, it was a gradual over time being exposed to more and more, you know, Molyneux and all that, you know, some of your older stuff.
So you were slow like me.
Yeah, it was a gradual progression into it.
For me, it was 2007, 2008, I watched Zeitgeist. And that just opened up questioning. I've never really questioned before that, any real narrative.
I hear Zeitgeist was a start for a lot of people.
Yeah, it cites curiosity, even if it's like exaggerated. But
I mean, I really enjoyed it. I watched them all. I mean, some of them are exaggerated. And started to get into dystopian fiction, seeing how parallels there. It was a lot of fun. And then Ron Paul. And then you. It was kind of escalated toward in that manner. It's a simple, nutshell answer.
I started watching your videos.
Good answer.
Youngins.
I realized taxation is theft. And once you realize that, you're only 2 steps away.
domino effect.
Yeah.
So, Josh, do we have everything?
No, not from the speaker perspective.
Will, David, and JD?
We have Will, and I think that David said he was going to be a little bit late. And then JD, I have not heard from JD. Is anybody heard from?
No, I can try.
We're on too much overhead.
So what woke you up? Are you awake? He's my own son. I guess he's pretty libertarian, so to speak.
But how do you define awake? That's a good question. But that would ruin like the
Levels of it. For sure, different levels.
If you want to get started, you're welcome to. If you want to wait
So
for more people to show up.
So Will is here and Josh is here, and we know that David is on the way. Should we wait for David and then get started? Is he close?
The one person who knew, I think, just left the room to call JD.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll just dance until they get here then. Yeah, that was the joke. Well, please sit down at least. I'll go back to the
I've
rocket
been sitting all day at work. I'll sit a little bit.
So do story time this evening.
What's your opinion on cultural Marxism?
Cultural Marxism. No, I don't care. I can just screw it 2 hours, man. Just give me a minute.
Please, take your time, man.
Whoa, true, 2 hours.
Does anybody else want to share their story about how they came to their present worldview?
Mine was in 1976, July 4th, and the bicentennial, when the tall ships were coming in, and the Queen Lizard was standing up there dictating everything, and it's like, well, wait a minute, I thought we had our independence from them. Why is she dictating all this stuff? And started looking into it, and been awake ever since.
Well, when you say started looking into it, what were you looking into, and what information sources guided you through that process?
Well, first it was the so-called media, and learned that they were a crock of crap, and then started looking into the government, and then in school when they were telling us stuff, and it was like, well, wait a minute, that's not right. You know, you can read a book and learn half this history isn't correct, and then they learned it was indoctrination, and just started listening to people and following conspiracy theories, and finding out that most of the conspiracy theories are true. So, and then got into being press, and that really wakes you up when you get behind the scenes on everything.
Who's next?
Well, I read The Prince by Machiavelli, and kind of explains a lot of like the reasoning behind politics and, you know.
Sorry, can you speak up?
Well, The Prince by Machiavelli is a political book, and it's kind of like, it explains a lot about how modern government works and how you lie to gain power and so forth. And then afterwards, I just started reading other things like Common Sense.
Thomas Paine's Common Sense?
Yeah.
The apple don't fall there far.
Liberal route.
We have most of our team, there's 3 of us, so should we get going?
Okay, all right.
Welcome to the For the Love of Freedom Richmond! Just because you're in a library tonight doesn't mean you have to be shy. We're going to have more fun in this library you've seen in a long time tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Now, one of the things that we do all too often as libertarians when we get together, if I may presumptively, collectivistly apply that label to all of you, is that we tend to pat ourselves on the back and tell each other how right we are about everything. So tonight I want to talk about something a little more practical. And so let me get this out of the way. Congratulations, you guys are right about everything. Even those of you who disagree with the other ones of you about that thing that you're absolutely positive about, you guys are right about everything too. So, and it's nice to see that the movement is at least expanding a little out of our, core circle of white male INTJs who tonight, thank you very much for crawling out of your basements and your parents' basements and not spamming for Ron Paul anymore. I really appreciate that. But next time we get people together like this, we want to make sure that we're forming the connections that strengthen the movement, not just coming together for an intellectual or ideological indulgence. So I'm not going to say turn to the person to your left and shake their hand and turn to the person to your right and shake their hand. I'll just say, please make an effort to meet somebody new tonight, and in so many ways, give people the encouragement to be better activists in a way that strengthens the movement. And I will say, before we bring our guest speakers up tonight in this vein, that we want to introduce you to people who are doing work locally, who you should know, who you can get plugged in with. But I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary of full-time activism next February, almost 10 full years of this, and I've seen a lot of people come and go, thank you. I've seen a lot of people come and go in the movement for a variety of reasons, but, burnout, personal circumstances, financial circumstances, whatever it is that makes it hard for people to stick around and make, I don't think of it as a sacrifice. I think of it as a wiser long-term investment. Sometimes short-term interests get in the way of making that long-term investment. But one of the things that really encourages me is the kind of feedback that I get now after 10 years, having made every mistake possible in the activist playbook, and now shifting my focus to how I share this message in a way that's empowering and helps people live better lives. And so now I'm at the point where I get emails at least once a day, messages across social media from someone saying, Adam, thank you for changing my life. Because of you, I did not enlist in the United States military. It gets better. Because of you, I did not become a police officer. Because of you, I got so angry that I had to go out and grow my own vegetables. And so if there's someone here tonight or someone in your life, maybe it's someone whose work you've read or videos you've watched or something else, tell them. If someone has helped you become a better libertarian in however you want to define that, if anybody has helped you become a better person, tell them, give them that feedback, because that's what keeps us going as activists, that kind of appreciation. And now that I've been at least focused on winning converts rather than winning arguments, I've been getting a lot more of that. That's one of the things we're going to talk about tonight. But first, we have some great guest speakers tonight. First, Will Hammer. Will is the founder and CFO of Freedom Gulch, best known for his runs for U.S. House and Virginia House, which were historic bests for the Libertarian Party of Virginia. He's also the 2016 recipient of the Patrick Henry Award, awarded at this last Libertarian National Convention. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Hammer.
All right, guys. I don't know how many of y'all are anarcho-capitalists or minarchists, but I imagine all of us are broad-stroke libertarians, as Adam spoke. And I just want to talk about how I know a lot of people do not believe in the political process. Myself, I went through a stage where I didn't see that as very beneficial, but I came back around and I did see that there is a benefit to working within the political realm. Myself, I went to college as a liberal, raised as a Democrat, and went to college as a physics major. Decided not to do that, took a semester of classes, and took an economics class. And I was hooked after that. I was very blessed to go to a college with a lot of Austrians, Anthony Grilli, Chris Coyne, and so I got hooked on that and became a libertarian. Of course, I started as a classical liberal and worked my way down the rabbit hole until I became a full-on voluntarist, anarcho-capitalist by 2011, 2012. And I just want to point out that a lot of people do not believe in the political process, like I said, but you need to realize that a lot of people come into the movement through the political process. And a lot of us, including me, with Ron Paul, 2007, 2008, came into the libertarian movement because of him. And so it has a double meaning where you can educate people, you can reach out to people, you can awake people to the libertarian principles, and then you bring them in, you educate them, and then they can keep on going down the so-called rabbit hole till they get to the point where it's the logical conclusion of voluntarism. But at the very least, we get more libertarians, more people that are liberty-minded, and we can grow that movement, whether it's political or whether it's through agorism and other means, using Bitcoin, using peer-to-peer technology, Uber or Lyft, whatever you see fit that you can advance the movement. I recommend being active, whether it is using Uber and Lyft or Airbnb or Bitcoin or running for office or going out and petitioning for libertarian candidates. Just get active. People like Adam Kokesh, of course, have always brought a lot of people into the movement, as well as Ron Paul and other people. And so you never know who you're going to affect. When I ran 2 years, I had a lot of people message me that this is the first time they're voting libertarian, and that gets people into the mindset, and they actually start looking into libertarianism. And so don't dismiss political game. Think of it as one tool in your toolkit to advance liberty. And don't necessarily make it your only tool, but that's one tool in the toolkit to further the cause. And, as Henry David Thoreau would say, live your life you imagined. And so just live as it were that you wish to see the world be, the stateless society or a smaller government society. Like I said, use those services and just help out each other and grow the movement as much as you can, whatever means you believe is the best that you can do. So that's all I'm going to have to say today. So I really appreciate it, and thank you, Adam. You're a very big person to get me to the point where I am, and I look forward to Kokesh 2020. So
Excellent. Just to echo what he said specifically, it was really a powerful moment for me at the convention to hear Will Coley debate as someone who expressed remorse as a freedom activist to say that he had neglected the opportunity of political participation as a way of reaching groups that he wasn't able to otherwise, and to hear him speak so passionately about that at least one of the vice presidential debates at the Libertarian Convention was a very big affirming moment for me, and I would encourage everybody to check that out if they get a chance. But there are a lot of candidates now who are realizing exactly what Will said, and I'd like to think that I will soon be one of them. So, David Bucciarelli ran for City Council in Colonial Heights last year. He is here to talk about how our government is a cancer and how my activism, my name's in his introduction, so I'm trying to avoid saying it incorrectly here. But we also want to thank David on behalf of the volunteer team, especially our volunteer coordinator, Alyssa Walden, for David helping out with this event. So, ladies and gentlemen, David Bucciarelli.
How's everybody doing today? My name is David Bucciarelli. I ran for City Council last year in a special election. Yeah, it was the first time I've really done some public speaking, to be honest with you.
You're doing great.
Thanks. Thanks. I got involved and ran because City Council the city planners and stuff was trying to, code enforcement, I'm sorry, I had a complete brain fart. Alright, code enforcement was going around and nitpicking everything, so I got involved and started running. Well, they was trying to enforce codes, silly codes, like they wanted trash cans to be off the side of the street, and it was nitpicking grass.
Writing tickets.
Yeah.
Put on people's doors.
And then one thing while I was running, I was going around, and one of my big things was the blue light law. On Saturday night after 12 o'clock, bars can't stay open. Can't sell alcohol. While running, I started talking about that to different people. This year I didn't run again. It's a normal election. But 3 other people running for the open seats talking about that. And that's one thing that I remember watching a lot of stuff Adam said, was once you hear something, you cannot unhear it. While we might run and not get elected at times, when you talk about stuff, people then hear it and they can't forget it. So once it's said, it's said. But when I got involved, I was libertarian leading. A guy named Carl Loser introduced me to Adam Kokesh's videos, and it just started leading me more and more towards the voluntarist thought process. Thank you for all you've done and continue to do.
I didn't pay him to say that.
That's all I got.
Finally, Joshua Wilkinson is the political director of LP Virginia and a Richmond native, here to talk about the strategy for the party here in the state in the immediate future. And of course, thank you to Josh for being instrumental in putting this event together as well.
I should have done this in the beginning, but I kind of just want to take the temperature of the room really quick. Like, has anybody here been following the federal election that we're going to have in a couple months? Okay, not much familiar. Probably you two are the same ones. Good for you. I'm glad you had a bit. So who here, just so I know how to message correctly, I don't want to tell you things you already know. Who here considers themselves quote unquote a voluntarist or anarchist, or who believes that there should not be a state? Okay. Who believes that, maybe there should be, maybe they're a minarchist, maybe there should be the minimal sort of necessary state in your mind?
Enough to keep it together.
Yeah. Okay.
Just so that way, running down the street, all Raider style, Fallout 4,
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, we'll talk about a lot of things I want to talk about, so we can make this really quick. But does anyone here find voting immoral? I'm not going to vote. Voting's violent.
Voting is immoral, whether you find it so or not.
Okay, well, I believe you. I believe that you believe that. Who here votes, if you don't mind asking? Who thinks that, well, it's okay to vote, it's good to vote? Okay.
I tried, but it seems it just doesn't matter if I put my vote out there. The person I want ain't getting in.
Yeah, people are so, like, their vote to them is so sacred. Like, they think that their vote is going to decide the election. So they're like, we got to vote for him because he's the only one that can win. I don't know the last major election that was actually won by one vote, but so who among here is interested? I guess voting is one way to express ourselves. How many of you are interested in outreach and talking other people sort of in the way that you think, trying to help us grow this movement? Is anybody interested in that type of activity? Okay, because if you think about sort of if you think about the public, the political spectrum as a funnel. They didn't give us a marker, but at the top of the funnel is everybody, everyone, all the liberals, conservatives, the people who are non-political, and at the very bottom of the funnel, the small little bit of the funnel, that's this room. There are a few more of us than this, but this is representative of kind of what we have. There are not a whole lot of us right now, and I think if we want to get what we want politically, or without without politics, either way, we need to bring more people to our line of thinking, and. I don't think that there's one way to do that. I think we argue with ourselves that this movement is so incestuous and critical of itself. I would like to see more moments like what happened a second ago. Like, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Dave kind of like lost train of thought for a second, and so Tyler said, kind of like, hey, was it like this? Was like that? I love that sort of like that nurturing. Like, I mean, we're a small group, and we need to build each other up and pick each other up, and not tell each other we're wrong all the time, because we're not all in the same point of this funnel. Even in this room, even of Adams fans, we're not all in the exact same space. So if we listen, if we talk to each other, if instead of trying to push a philosophy of, I read this book and that book, and so therefore you're wrong, but we try to let the people that we're talking to kind of drive a little bit of the problems that they have in their lives, and so we don't have to sort of sell them on this ideological consistency, but if we can we have the best answers, we have the right philosophy. So that philosophy should solve real-world problems, and I think it does. And so if we can sort of let them lead with the problems they're having, I think we have the solution to those issues. And that hits harder and has greater impact than sort of trying to convince. Who in here has logically defeated somebody into admitting that they were wrong and won an argument that way? If you obviously have, I'd love to see. Okay. All right, yeah. I mean, okay. And so sometimes that works. Who here has tried that and had it not work, even though you were right? It's wherever it works. We have to try things. 3 weeks ago, who would have guessed that we would be talking about a controversy about standing and for the national anthem, and that controversy would be spurred by a backup quarterback who makes $12 million a year not standing up? It seems perfectly reasonable in retrospect. Oh yeah, everyone watches football. It makes perfect sense. But I don't think any of us would have predicted that. I don't think that this revolution that we're going to be a part of, I don't think we can know exactly how it's going to take place. I think we need to try different things and just kind of see what works and see who gets momentum. Different people will come over different ways. So kind of the main point of what I'm talking about is let's try to remember that everybody's in a little different place on this imaginary funnel, and that, hey, welcome, come on in, guys. Hey. and that if we let the other people, if we solve their problems, and we teach them at least how we can solve their problems or address their issues, not that it's going to be a perfect utopia, I think we can win more support than by sort of, this is my philosophy and this is why everything you believe is wrong and your parents are wrong, kind of thing. Because people are resistant to that typically. If you can do that consistently, you're going to be an amazing activist because we would be bigger now than we are. So I want to talk a little bit about, real quickly, what's going on here in Virginia. Right now, everyone in the country is thinking about this November election, Hillary or Trump, who's it going to be? No one really likes either one of them. Most people don't like either one of them. And most people think the world is going to end there mostly because of the Supreme Court. And one of the reasons I appreciate people like Adam is that he thinks a little bit more strategically than that. There is going to be a tomorrow, and we can't make these decisions like we get cornered into buying a used car. So we have to think a little more strategically. No matter who wins in November, here in Virginia, at least half of the state is going to be pissed off. They're going to be not happy. Most people are not going to like either one of them. And I want you guys to think about 1 year from now. We're electing 101 members of the House of Delegates next year. The whole House of Delegates is going to turn over. Last year, 70 of those 101 seats were unopposed. No one even ran against the incumbent or the person running. 70% unopposed. Each district has, I want to say, 20 or 30,000 people, maybe more than that, maybe 70,000 people, maybe 30, probably should have looked that one up before I got up here. But most of them have a participation of 3,000 to 4,000 people come out and vote. If we can use whatever technique is most comfortable with us, talking to the types of people that we most get along with and relate to, we can win seats in the House of Delegates next year. And then all over the country, all the libertarian activists, next time for 2020 and in 2018, when they say, oh yeah, what have you guys ever won? You've never won anything. If we can win at least one seat in the House of Delegates, that would just be so tremendous for this movement nationwide. And I think we can do it. And I want us to keep in touch. I'm going to put my cards on the table. So you guys can shoot me an email if you want to talk about how to do this. We need candidates to run in the House of Delegates. We're looking for about 20 to 30. We're going to try to get some opposition there. And I think with the tone of the nation, of the state, I really think we have a chance to win a few. Now let's see what we do. Right now, it's about 2/3 Republican, and we have a Democratic governor. And if we can win, 4 or 5 seats in the House of Delegates, the veto-proof majority that the Republicans need to overturn one of McCullough's vetoes has to come through us. They have to come to us, and they have to involve us. So even with a small number of seats, we can have a huge impact on how this $80 billion transportation tax, is spent. How am I doing on time? So I'd love for your help with that. If you want to run, if you want to help us run here in the Richmond area, we're kind of thinking about like a statewide ticket because we want people to know this is what we're doing. This is the first time we've ever publicly talked about this. So some of us have been kind of strategizing on it for a while, but this is the first time we've been talking about it. How does that hit you guys? Is that crazy? Does that sound realistic? Does that seem like somewhat possible, plausible?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
County governments, man.
What's that?
County governments.
Yeah, okay, so county governments, at least for Henrico County where I live, is 2017. That's or 2018. That's the next year. So, heaven forbid we don't achieve what we're trying to do next year. We should run those as well. Absolutely. So let's talk about some non-political things. We also, there's a group on Facebook called Richmond Metropolitan Libertarians. We have a monthly dinner that's the first Tuesday. It's Tuesday, right? The Patrick Henry Supper Club. Yeah, the first Tuesday we have dinner at the Robin Inn in the Fan. We've been doing a monthly on Brook Road up on the north side. We've been doing a monthly brunch on Saturday. But if you will join that page, we're going to also start for those of us who are over 21. We're going to start kind of like a monthly bar night. And the bar night's not going to be like real hardcore team black and yellow. It's just going to be people who might be open to. They're kind of interested in freedom. We're just going to get some people by, get some of those people from the top of the funnel that they can start to associate having a good time and talking with interesting, intelligent people with our broader movement. And then we'll either slowly or quickly kind of start to move them down the funnel versus going over and saying, hey, 5-year-olds should be able to buy heroin at the store. It's not going to work in Richmond, Virginia. I'm leading with that. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to leave my card. Shoot me an email. Love to get you guys. Love for you to continue what you're doing. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. And now I'd like to. I'll tell you a quick story about how I found out about Adam. So about 4 years ago, I found out about Adam like I meet all my friends now. I was arguing on Facebook. And I got an email, I got a message out of the blue from my friend in London who I hadn't talked to in years. And he sent me, all he did was send me a video. And it was a video of Adam. And I watched the video and I was like, wow, my friend is showing me how to do this without being a complete jerk to everybody. Like how to sort of live, how to live freedom and let people see how you live and show them that you're happy and you're liberated and you're not afraid. I'm starting to plagiarize you a little bit, so stop your feet and don't get too much into it. But I want you to
No, you should just take a whole hour. It's cool.
all right. Well, you're not paying me enough. But I want you to pay attention when Adam talks to not only what he says, but how he conducts himself. And I think he is free, and I think he does and have that love of the free life. And I think that, if we kind of start to maybe, with some people, if we emulate that a little bit, I think that could help with the outreach as well. So I'm going to leave my card out there. The video, it didn't really help me. I'm still a jerk to people on Facebook. But maybe you guys will have better luck.
Do you remember which video?
I don't remember.
Or what was the context? Like talking man on the street stuff?
Yeah, it was you. Yeah, it was you talking. It was like sort of more of like that. The hens filled, is it kind of investigative, asking questions?
Dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. Versus kind of telling people what was right. And it makes a lot of sense. It's a struggle. It's every day. We have to kind of remind ourselves not to get angry and to sort of evolve people. But with that, I'd love to introduce Adam Kokesh. Welcome him to Richmond, and I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you very much.
Well, after what you said there, Josh, I kind of want to start with something that I don't normally start with. People, when they introduce me, tend to be way too kind. So I usually have to issue corrections. I'm really glad you said what you did about that. At least I'm trying to be an example in that sense of living more free, but it's a discipline. It's like, being zen and perfectly self-centered, living by the values of freedom, living to your potential and respect for your own will that way. And it's part of what's in the book about emotional freedom, and especially after what I've been going through in my personal life recently, I can't claim that. And I think it's really important too that while it's a significant part of what I do is try to show people how the message has made my life better, how it's made me happier and more free, I can't say that it's the silver bullet. That living free, like living well, like living ethically, like living mindfully and conscientiously is an ongoing discipline. But thank you for at least giving me credit for being in the right direction, but I cannot take credit for having achieved any kind of destination, because there isn't really one in that regard. So, all right. So, how many of you consider yourselves to be awake? I only got almost every hand, huh? What a bunch of collectivist conformists you are. Oh, but you've all got tattoos, too, really trendy ones. I hope you guys don't mind. No. See, that's the rebellious thing now. So you're like, no, I don't have tattoos. I hope you don't mind. I have notes. I tend to get a little carried away. But don't worry just because I have notes. I promise I'll get carried away at least a few times. So, if we want to talk about changing how people think in order to change the world, we have to understand how we came to the understanding that we have, right? And it's, a process. We use this analogy, being awake versus being asleep, but it's not very accurate. At least it has a lot of limitations. And we feel like, oh my God, I woke up to something. When you embrace a worldview that you've thought through for yourself. But the implication of that is that everyone who doesn't share your worldview is asleep. And that's kind of insulting, isn't it? And in a way, I have to be humble to put in perspective what we're doing here. Like, hey, before you guys go off printing rocket ships in your backyards to populate the cosmos, can we just take care of this violence thing over here? Can we just stop doing this government thing? If anything, like what we're doing is rather basic to say, like, let's make ethics a universal standard. Let's raise the standard of ethics in society as opposed to carving out this exception for government. Don't hit, don't steal, don't kill, not unless you're a cop or an IRS agent or a soldier, right? So, depending on how you want to count it, this is, you could call it my 4th national tour, second, full comprehensive one like this. And I've traveled a lot, I've spoken to a lot of people in this movement. And everywhere I go, like we were doing before we started, I ask people, how did you wake up? How did you come to this understanding? How did you become a libertarian? And of course you get a lot of
smart aleck answers to that question, but I'd like to think that I have one of the best, or at least a pretty good body of anecdotal data of how people wake up. And I've never heard anyone say, well, there was this guy yelling at me in a bar, and he turned the volume up just enough. I was able to realize he was right about everything, and I said, fine, I'll be a libertarian. I've never heard anyone say, well, it was a dark and stormy night, and I was in the middle of the most intense Facebook flame war ever. And I lost, and I said, fine, all right, I'll be a libertarian. I've never heard anyone say, well, I've got this friend on the internet, and one day he just came up with the dankest meme ever. I lolled so hard, at the end I just said, all right, I'm a libertarian. I could keep going, but I think you guys can. It's a deeply intellectual, personal, emotional, even spiritual process that we go through in saying, I'm not going to accept what I've been told. I'm going to think things through for myself. And about this process, I'm really glad that if only we had a dry erase pen, that Josh pointed out that there's this funnel, right? If you've been around this movement long enough, I'm really glad that you used that physical analogy, that it's a funnel. And I think that really captures it. I've had that shape, like that process in my mind, this idea of all of these lost souls, like, can we make it an inverted funnel so that we're like ascending instead of descending? I'm still trying to figure out the physicality of this analogy, but that there's an inevitability to this process, right? You know the difference. What's the difference? Or you know the joke? What's the difference between a statist and a libertarian? Right? Anybody? 6 months. About 6 months. Thank you. Some say it's between a libertarian and an anarchist, but really it's that funnel, and you can tell when someone's just floating around the scum at the top, right? And then something tips them off, and they go, wait a second, you know, there's some cognitive dissonance that is raised that they can't ignore, and that sends them down this process, down this path, this process of discovery, of enlightenment, of seeking the resolution to that cognitive dissonance. And it's accelerating. This process gets faster and faster. It's not 6 months anymore. Now it's, like we heard earlier, a weekend of watching YouTube videos and reading Wikipedia articles, perhaps, right? You know? You gotta check that. Oh, now we have a dry erase marker. All right. The freedom funnel comes to life. So, left, right, freedom, I don't know. And you know, some people, now I get to really have fun with it, like, and you get to see all the crazy stuff that's been going on in my head. Now, but then when people wake up, you know, sometimes they veer off and they come out, you know, whatever. In my process, I was always kind of a anti-authoritarian, at least from birth. And, you know, that's the convergence. Okay, what's happening in my head is actually a lot more pretty than this. Forgive my visual art lack of skills here. But it's a beautiful process. And it's an awakening. You feel the inevitability of once you've seen enough people go through it, and you know that you don't really go up here. It's a one-way street of awareness raising. You don't wake up and go back to sleep. Use this very, very riveting analogy that we like so much. Or on here. I've never heard anyone say, what?
If it's a funnel and you can't go back, wouldn't you be falling out of the funnel at that point?
Well, right. This is where, like, my fantasy in my head about this process is that, you know, there's a big growing pool down here that just keeps getting bigger, and everybody falls out of statism, right? So I've never heard anyone say, like, oh yeah, freedom, liberty, we're gonna embrace self-ownership and wake everybody up and establish a free society. And the next day, never mind. Forget all that stuff. Just go back to pointing government guns at people. Yeah, let's do that. So one of the things that
I think is really the single most important thing that's holding us back as a movement is that we have been fooled into thinking of this as a political movement. It's not. If politics is the conversation of who do we point the guns of government at to organize society, and our answer is nobody, this is an anti-political message. It is the anti-political movement. It is a message of ethics and philosophy and truth. Self-realization, human empowerment, freedom, happiness. That's not a political message. So there's an important implication of this for how we move forward. Because we've been thinking of this as a political message. When you think of it as a political message, and Josh, I'm so glad that you raised it this way as well. How many of you have argued with people, right? And it's true that occasionally, excuse me, this is my Clinton moment. Occasionally, in the proper context, you can reach somebody with that, right? If you're sitting someone down who trusts you, whose family maybe, you can kind of argue with them. You can guide them through the process that you went through. But you've all heard of confirmation bias, right? This is why so many hands went up. Well, yeah, we've done that and it hasn't worked. If someone holds an incorrect position on something, it could be a basic scientific, even like geographical fact, you give them information or data to the contrary, and they will dig in their heels and become more confident in their incorrect position. People are funny like that, right? And now some of you are going, oh crap, you mean most of my activism has been counterproductive? Yeah, sorry, I hate to break it to you. By the way, are there any news junkies in the room? News junkies, at least one, two? Recovering news junkies? Recovering news, yeah? I feel so much better not going after every squirrel that they, try to throw in front of us to distract us. You want a little oh crap moment for the movement here? Imagine if every single person who woke up to the message of freedom took all of the time that they've spent reading and watching the news and instead spent that time talking to people about freedom. The state would be obsolete. It would be gone by now. So, if this isn't a political movement, what is it? An ethics movement? A philosophy movement? A morality movement? A freedom movement? But if you notice how it behaves, it's a lot less like a political movement and a lot more like a religious movement. I know everybody, you're going to compare the freedom movement to a religious movement. And especially considering so many of us have gone through a religious awakening as well in this process, of at least our relationship to religious institutions or dogma. But if this behaves like this, one of the ways that it does is that we win converts. And we're not talking about converts to an ideology or a dogma. We're talking about converts to the anti-dogma, the anti-ideology, to the idea of thinking things through for yourself, of coming up with a worldview based on your own reason and logic and evidence rather than accepting what you've been told. So if that's the case, now we can kind of narrow this down, because it seems like, we want to make more libertarians, but we're kind of shy of saying, no, we are here to win converts. We are here to convert people from statism to libertarianism. And it's not because there's a dogma here, it's because we came to libertarianism by thinking for ourselves. At least most of us. Some of you already say, well, Adam said so I was a libertarian, right? I've never heard that one either, for the record. Now, if you want to share this message, you have to stop arguing with people. When you have the ability to share this from the perspective, hey, this is something that has made me more free, this has made my life better, this has empowered me to be happier, would you like to hear about it? Well, I don't know about that. Be free and happy sounds good and all, but who's going to build the roads? But when you go about this properly, you skip all of that objection. Do you know who wins every single argument? This is where someone usually yells out from the back, the wife!
The one who doesn't get into it.
The first person to stop stop arguing. But when we think of this as a political message, we want to argue. We want to debate. Let's play this zero-sum game. I'm right, you're wrong, let's figure it out. As opposed to, hey, I've got this beautiful perspective that has made my life better, and I'd like to share with you. Would you like to hear about it? That fundamental shift to being positive and being patient is what has been the most important shift in my activism, and it's resulted in a much greater sense of that feedback that I mentioned earlier, of people saying, thank you, Adam, you changed my life. So there's a bit of a debate ongoing in this movement, and I know some of you have been around longer than others, but you've probably all heard within the libertarian context of principle versus pragmatism, right? Principle is pragmatic, that's the point. When you do unprincipled things, unpragmatic results happen. And when someone is trying to set this up as a false dichotomy, you know it's someone who's trying to pull you away from your principles. Someone who's trying to induce fear in you to say, well, we have to present the message a certain way because people might perceive it like that. So let's make it this easy to communicate political thing that, as you have seen, doesn't inspire anyone and doesn't win any converts when you're saying, oh, you're a statist, let me show you how to be a slightly less stupid, awkward, painful statist. As opposed to, let me actually free your mind and change the way that you fundamentally think. This is what wakes people up. Again, issue by issue, news, distractions, doesn't help wake people up. I've never heard anyone say it was talking about an issue except when it was something that affected their personal life, like military service or interaction with the police or some other legal situation. So I want to share a little bit about my personal story of waking up and a story from when I was in Fallujah in 2004. If you couldn't tell from the stupid look on my face, I was in the Marines. Yes, I like to learn the hard way. Thank you very much. But I was in Fallujah in 2004, and as to how I got there, I first became a libertarian in name only, at least in high school, when they said, do you want to be a Republican or Democrat? I was like, no! Wait. I don't have a choice. I have to be totally freaking lame. I thought this was America. And it was like, well, there's these crazy libertarians that like to be left alone. Oh, okay, yeah, sign me up for that. You know, I got in trouble a lot as a kid. I'd already gotten kicked out of the school, so I was like, yeah, leave me alone. I'll take that. And the version of the message that I got at that time, and this is back 1998, 1999, geez, I'm old. Fiscally conservative, socially awkward. Sorry, fiscally conservative. It's rolled off the tongue better when we say it the other way. Socially liberal, fiscally conservative. And I was passionate about that. Like, oh yeah, we're so much more right than the Republicans and Democrats who don't think this through, who just get the party talking points. But it didn't stop me from enlisting in the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old. It didn't stop me from being a part of this military security monopoly. It didn't stop me from volunteering to go to Iraq in 2004. I was with the 6-man civil affairs team in Fallujah for 7 months. And there was one night during the siege of Fallujah, this is the story. If you don't know your modern military history, that's okay. It's probably a good thing. The siege of Fallujah was precipitated by 4 Blackwater security agents driving across the southern bridge over the Euphrates. We called it the George Washington. They were immediately ambushed and had their bodies strung up and burned on the northern bridge. We called it the Euphrates, or the Brooklyn Bridge, because it was like a latticework bridge. And then the city was surrounded by several battalions of Marines, and the company that I was attached to, or that my team was attached to, was responsible for the blockade positions on those bridges. And for a while during the siege, I ran a checkpoint on the bridge where they had been strung up on the Brooklyn, and was instructed to let women and children out of the city. That is, any man of fighting age. You know, if he's old enough to be in your fighting bowl, he doesn't get out of the city. So that would include you. How old are you? 15. I put you on the spot. 15. Yeah. You're 15. Oh, sorry, you can't get out of the city because you might pick up a gun. And the city at the time was being bombarded with C-130 Spectre gunship fire and artillery fire, and so of course there are other people trying to get out of the city. And 2 young men were caught at one point, one day while we were there. They had sandbags put over their heads, their hands zip-tied behind their backs,
and they were taken to a guard shack by the bridge where they were forced to sit cross-legged on the floor. They weren't allowed to get up for anything, to go to the bathroom, to sleep. And so you can imagine after, when I got to them after about 12 hours, they were pretty darn uncomfortable. If you try to sit cross-legged on the floor still with your hands behind your back, you'll find out after about 15 minutes that that's a stress position. And what we were doing was clearly in violation of the Geneva Convention. So when I was asked to guard the detainees, I was told that it was my job to keep them awake and keep them exactly in the positions that they were in. I taught myself Arabic when I got to Iraq because I wanted to be better at my job, to be more compassionate, to be better able to help the Iraqi people in our civil affairs capacity. I had a textbook, I worked with translators, and this particular night when I was doing a 4-hour shift with these detainees, I used my Arabic to taunt them. So you can see that there's a bit of a problem serving in a war based on lies, torturing people whom I'd never met, all while calling myself a libertarian. That's the difference between conveying this as a message of ethics versus a message of politics. It changes how people act. It changes how people relate to each other. And that's what we need to do if we really want to change society, of course. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I joined Iraq Veterans Against the War. I was given all, we started protesting around D.C., did the Operation First Casualty mock combat patrol around the city as our street theater, and we were getting all these briefs from these experienced leftist protesters about, getting arrested. You're going to have the lawyer's, phone number and Sharpie on your arm. You might do a weekend in jail. And I was like, I just did 7 months in Fallujah. Don't threaten me with a good time, and that was the start of my full-time activism, throwing myself into that. And I found myself surrounded by veterans who were just as passionate about what we were doing as we had been about going to combat, and these were people who really cared about what they were doing. Most of them were left-oriented, but I was having these conversations with them on these long road trips, going out to events and protesting and hosting rallies and things like that. And they always came down to matters of opinion. And I was really unsatisfied with that. I was like, well, I'm a libertarian. I know I'm right about everything. I just have to prove it. And that's what got me thinking in a more objective, a more rational sense, really drilling down on these arguments. And it led me down the rabbit hole that ended up with me reading Ethics of Liberty by Murray Rothbard. And actually, I should say that's kind of a lie. I just listened to the audiobook. But there was a moment, I remember where I was even. I don't want to mythologize this because that's exactly what I'm trying to not do, or to demythologize this process of waking up. But there was a time, and it was a long drive. I was coming back from like an event in Texas, driving back to New Mexico, and I was just listening to hours of this audiobook. And there was a point for me at which it crystallized into a solid framework, and I was able to really embrace it and say, this is what I believe in. And that's another point that to me really is like the bottom of the funnel there when you finally fall out, and you get it as a coherent set of ideas. So I couldn't shut up when the race was over. I got a radio show in Albuquerque. It was the start of Adam versus the Man, AM 1550 KIVA, more positive talk radio. And I was about to get canceled because I wasn't selling ads for the radio show. I was actually supporting myself selling marijuana quasi-legally that I had grown myself. I had a card, and I was growing in a closet in an apartment. My favorite interaction with government, there's no video of this, unfortunately, but my favorite interaction with government ever is a cop coming and knocking on my door saying, "Excuse me, sir, your neighbors have complained about the smell of marijuana." And I pulled out my magic government card, and he went away. So, because when my radio show got canceled, or right before my radio show was about to get canceled, it got picked up as a television show. You might have heard of Adam versus Man on RT America, Russia Today, which is the Russian government poking the American government in the eye. And I was really happy to be a part of that finger for the brief time that they allowed me to. I did 4 months before I got canceled, and I was just as critical of Putin as any American politician, of course. They did, to their credit, respect that I had full editorial control over the show, but at some point, they were like, wait a second. This guy's not just against the American government, he's against the idea of government?
we're a state-sponsored media outlet. We can't be paid for this. So I did some careful negotiating and was fortunate enough to get bought out of my contract and have the funds